Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm checking out two new brushed micro quadcopters. They are the JJPRO T1 and the JJPRO T2. Now, as far as I can tell, these quadcopters are identical. In fact, they're the same price apart from the frame. So they are a competitor to the Eachine QX series. So let's see what you get. This is the T1. I have to remember which is which. And we have got the 8mm motors. We're given a 600 milliamp one cell battery, but they are JJPRO branded. These ones, I've got one here actually. Exactly the same size. Now the flight controller is different. This is the Naze 32 variant of the brush board, opposed to the SP Racing F3 Evo that we get on the QX series. And the camera is different as well. As far as I can see, this is the Eachine EF01 camera, so it's 25 milliwatts. It has got 40 channels, and it's a really nice package, really. So in both of the frames, you get given some accessories, and they're exactly the same accessories. So let's have a look what you get. It comes in this sealed bag here. So we get given a charger. You're given some spare black rubber bands, some Velcro tape, some spare motor holders, and a spare set of props. And that is the same for both of these frames. So the T2, what is different? Well, just the frame really. Everything else is exactly the same. Now this one's a little bit heavier. This one is 44 grams, and that is without the battery, of course. And this one is 40 grams. So this one is 4 grams heavier. However, it is 4 grams sturdier as well. If you look at this frame, it reminds me of the QX80. The motors are well protected with this one, and the frame is rock solid there. Got these nice little cutouts in the carbon, so all of these frames are carbon, but you can see that the motor wires are protected with this one. And what I like about both of these is the battery has been taken into consideration. So we've got two nice bands there. Well, actually it's just one band that stretches across this bottom plate here, and the battery fits in nice and secure. And then with the T1 we have a band over here as well. So I know what you're probably thinking at this point. This one's lighter and it's got the same setup, so it's better, right? Well, we'll have to see about that. One thing that I will say about this one, though, is that it does fit rolling spider props. Just about. So they just about missed this frame here. And one thing I noticed with the T1 is the propellers only just missed this frame here. I had to push the motors up slightly, otherwise they interfered with the screws. Now, on paper, this frame looks to be the better one because it's lighter. However, I noticed something a little bit unusual with this one, and that is rolling spider props fit on the front, but they don't fit on the back. In fact, they catch on the back, which can only mean that the motors at the back are actually closer together than the motors at the front. So I'll have to see if that creates any problems with the flight characteristics. Just looking at it there, it doesn't seem to be the case, but these motors are definitely further apart than the back one, so I'm not sure how that is going to corner. This is like kind of like a hybrid H-frame and X-frame. These motors at the back really swoop backwards and in, so I have to see if cornering is a problem with that one. But both of them have these really nice standoffs. One thing that I noticed with the T1 is the camera's in really secure, and the lens doesn't move at all, so it's not going to go out of focus. However, the camera is pointing slightly downwards. So compared to this one, this is the T2, the camera is really quite loose, and it slightly points upwards as well. I guess that is just the build quality though, I guess. I think I've noticed with a lot of these micro quads, the standard of the build is different because they have been manually built. They've been not manufactured by a machine. People have actually built these things. Another thing that I noticed with both of these is the flight controller is on a sticky pad and it's not quite flat, so I had to adjust that. That is the case for both of them. However, I think the board is a little bit more secure on the T2. Yeah, so this one's got the standoffs as well. But this one cannot take the rolling spider props. Now, if you don't know about this channel and rolling spider props, they're basically the props that produce the most amount of thrust for these micro brushed motors. And this one, I guess, is like 80 mil size and they touch. So this one cannot have the rolling spider props at all. This one, it can. However, you have to put these motors in a V-tail formation at the back so that they miss each other. Otherwise, the back ones, these are the back motors here, if you put the rolling spider props on, they are going to hit each other. But if you just move the motors out to the side like that, even though the instructions tell you not to do that, you're going to get more thrust. Because these propellers, they look like the same propellers that were on the QX80, and the thrust wasn't bad, but it wasn't as good as the Hubsan propellers that come on, say, the QX95. As for the motors, are they the same powerful motors as the QX95? I'll have to see. However, one thing that I did notice is that the motor shaft is really short, just like the QX95, so I will have to test that out. So what I've done with both of these is I have flashed Betaflight to both of them. So they come with CleanFlight installed, and I checked and they don't have an arming function, so you have to arm with the rudder, and they only have angle mode. So what I have done is I have flashed Betaflight to both of them, and if you want to know how to do that, I went in more detail on my QX80 build video on how to do that, so I'm not going to do that with these two. One thing that I will say though is that both of them required different tunes, and I'll get onto that more when we do the flight test. So one thing that I do like about this flight controller is that if you plug the battery in and leave it for 10 seconds, then the receiver goes into an auto bind, which is quite nice. There is also a bind button on this though as well, so if you want to press that button. For me, I just wait for the 10 seconds. So what I'm using to control this is my trusty FreeSky Tyrannus, and I have installed an Orange RX module on the back. I tend to find that this works the best, and then I'm going to bind it to each of these and go for a fly. For the FPV, I'm using these. Now, I struggled to explain which FPV gear I use because these are the old Fat Shark Dominator V2s, which they didn't sell anymore. They discontinued, but you may have noticed on Banggood recently they started selling this again, and I'm not surprised because this is just my opinion. I gave these a bashing when they came out, but all of the ones that came out since these haven't been as good in my opinion. Now, they have had improvements, so they had a updated DVR with a super cap, so if you unplug the battery you don't lose your footage, etc. And they get the PAL NTSC format correct each time, so that was a problem with these. I have replaced the DVR and updated it, so you can do that now because Banggood are selling the V2 again, and I wonder if it's partly off my recommendation because I do think they are really good. I don't like the HD2s. I find them really blurry. I like the idea of the HD3s, by the way. The only thing the HD3 is missing, in my opinion, is the 4:3 16:9 aspect ratio switch for the analog video mode. So I don't think the HD3s are quite there yet, but I think they made a good decision making the field of view shorter. I think they say 42 degrees because the 50 degrees or whatever it is on the HD2s was just too much, and it was blurry at the edges, and I never use it. So there you go. I hope that they keep those coming and it's just not a short run of some old stock because I really like this goggle. Of course, I updated the faceplate as well and this battery too, so it's an upgraded battery. And for the receiver, I'm using an on-way antenna and this AndyRC patch antenna, which I really like, and I'm using the Fat Shark diversity antenna as well. So some expensive gear there, but it gets me good results. And of course we have the DVR under here as well, which is going to record the footage, which you're going to see in a moment. So that is my initial thoughts of these, but really, how do each one of them fly? Well, let's go and take a look. So starting off with the T1, and I'm going to do a punch test straight away, and it's not bad, but it's certainly not on par with the QX95. Perhaps it's those propellers there. There's a couple of things that I didn't mention earlier, and that is that the receiver is built in to the flight controller, so it's a DSM2 receiver. You are also given a Hubsan style prop remover as well, which is quite nice. Now I'm flying this around and it looks pretty good on the video, but I was struggling to enjoy flying it, and it's definitely down to those two motors at the back being closer together than the front. And the way that I can describe it is it's kind of like the rear end is slipping, much like a rear-wheel drive car would, and it's not a problem with the tune at all. I spent so much time tuning this, but every so often I would do a turn like this and it would just fall out of the sky and crash. I crashed this so much compared to the T2, and so on that basis I struggle to recommend the T1 over the T2. So I thought I would fly it around again, and it flies quite nicely, and then all of a sudden you would do a very tight turn, and no matter what control input you put in to correct it, it would just fall out of the sky. I spent so long tuning the PIDs with this, I got the PIDs completely locked in, and it would still do it, so I have to put it down to those two motors at the back. Now, one thing that stands out with this for me, as you see there again, it sort of tumbled out of control, but I just managed to get it back because I got some height on. The camera is fantastic. In fact, I would say that it's even better than some of the CCD cameras, such as the Foxeer cameras and the HS1177, the HS1190 even. The clarity was just so sharp, and the picture was brilliant, the way that it tackled the different lighting conditions. The focus is perfect. This camera is so much better than the one that you get with the QX series. No tadpoles, so I've got two of these, and you'll see the other one, the second version, in a minute. The camera was fantastic. So yeah, I have to say, so far, even though this one seemed to be the best on paper, those two motors at the back there are causing a problem around the corners, and every so often it would just randomly crash. So with that being said, let's go and check out the T2 and how that one flies. So this is the T2, and just as I expected, this one flies much better. It's got a slightly different tune on it, but I didn't need to spend anywhere near as much time as I did the first one getting it to fly nice. In fact, the first one I used stock Betaflight PIDs, and it would just fall out of the sky instantly. So the more that I tuned it, the better it got, but ultimately it would still fall out of the sky on the yaw. This one, much better. In fact, you'll see that I'm already feeling relaxed with it, and I could tell you that I got a full flight without crashing, even though I nearly messed that corner up there. That was me rather than the quadcopter this time. Yeah, the full flight was 6.5 minutes. You can see I'm doing a punch out test there, and look, a backflip. I was scared to do that with the T1, really. I did a couple of them, but that was where it would fall out of the sky on a backflip, and also tight corners as well. This one looks like it's a little bit slippery, but that is just me on the sticks, and you'll see throughout this flight that I'm a lot more confident with it. So I'm just going to fly under the tree here. Just look at those leaves. It's very pretty this time of year, but very cold. I think it was about 9 degrees on this day. I'm going to have to come up with a solution for reviewing these models in the winter somehow. But the weather has been pretty good. It's cold, but the wind is flat calm, and we usually get that this time of year. So I'm just flying around these little paths that have been cut out by one of the neighbors. and it's really for dog walking, but it's really helpful for flying FPV. It's nice flying along all of these tracks and testing out the range. Now, the range of this camera is really good. I flew it to the edge of my field, which is about 120 meters or so, and it performed really nicely. So I would say with these two, if you don't want to do modifying, then perhaps go for the T2 model over the T1. I guess you could put a different frame on the T1, but then you have to start thinking to yourself, well, do I just get the QX95 instead? And I think a lot of people will be doing that. Over both of these, I would say that this has the better camera, and I think between the QX80 and this one, I go with this one. Just because, well, first of all, you don't have to build it out of the box, and the camera is better. I just love flying along these tracks that have been cut out. It's so much fun. And there's enough power there. It's not going to blow you away like the QX95 does. But I think the quality is better with this one than the QX95. And there's also less vibrations than on the QX95 as well. And the QX95 is a little bit more ballistic and probably not as suited to beginners as this one is. So as I say, out of the box, it's got a clean flight on it, and it's only got angle mode, so there's no acro, so you won't be able to do any of these flips. If you want to know how to install Betaflight and unlock all those modes so you can have acro, then check out my QX80 build video. I also show the PIDs that I use, very similar to this. I decide to see if I can get through this crack in the tree. Unfortunately, I ran out of talent and was not able to do it. But it was very robust and it survived the crash, no problems. So there's a pretty clear winner then, and it's surprisingly the T2. Or is it? You see, it has good flight characteristics, but the power isn't that great, especially if you compare it to the QX95, which has crazy power. However, I mentioned earlier that the T1 could fit rolling spider props. Now, it's not flying very good at all in its stock configuration, and that is because these two motors are closer in together at the back, and it's causing the back to fall out. But if you take the rolling spider propellers and put them on this, and then angle the back motors into a V-tail, that should give more stability and, of course, more power with this configuration. So let's see how it flies now like this. So I don't think people are going to want to mess around as much as I've had to here, but look at this, there's just way more punch with these propellers, much more on par with the QX95, but there's a lot of messing around to get it to that stage, and I think that's going to put people off, but it flies so much better now than it did with the stock propellers, and that V-tail at the back is making it much more stable around the corners, and it didn't drop out once. So there you go, that is my review of the JJPRO T1 and T2. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll put links in the description if you wish to purchase any of them. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.